Most engineers think high salaries are just a matter of time. They assume that if they stay long enough in the industry, their income will naturally grow year after year. But that assumption is becoming less accurate. In many cases, two engineers with the same experience, working in similar roles, end up in completely different income ranges. And the difference is not random. It follows a pattern. In the next few minutes, I'll break down why salary growth in tech is no longer linear, what actually determines who moves up and who stays stuck, and where most engineers misunderstand how this system works. Now, salary breakdown. Mid-level engineers often reach a point where salaries stabilize between $120,000 and $150,000. At this stage, income growth slows down significantly. Promotions may happen, but the increases are smaller than expected. And in many companies, the gap between mid-level and senior roles is not as large as people assume. This creates the illusion of progress, while actual income remains within the same range. And this is where many engineers plateau without realizing it. Another factor is how compensation is structured inside companies. At lower and mid-level roles, salaries tend to follow predefined bands. These bands create limits that are rarely visible. Even when performance improves, compensation often stays within the same boundaries unless a role change happens. This is why many engineers feel like they are progressing, while their income does not move. Now, market demand. Demand for engineers is still strong, but it has changed in structure. Companies are no longer hiring broadly based on general technical ability. They are looking for specific profiles that match their systems, infrastructure, and immediate needs. This is where things start to shift. Engineers who align with these needs tend to move forward faster. Others, even with similar experience, remain in the same positions. The difference is not effort, it is alignment. Now, competition level. At the same time, the number of developers entering the industry continues to grow. Universities, boot camps, and online programs are producing more engineers than ever before. This increases competition across all stages of the career. The number of high-paying roles has not expanded at the same rate, so progression becomes selective. And this is what most people miss. Growth is not automatic, it is filtered. And this shift is not only about competition, it is also about how value is defined. In earlier stages of the industry, writing code was often enough to stand out. Today, technical execution alone is common. What differentiates engineers now is how their work connects to larger systems. Engineers who understand how their work impacts performance, scalability, or revenue are valued differently. And this is where the gap between similar roles begins to widen. Now, junior reality. For newer engineers, this dynamic is even more visible. Entry-level roles are more competitive, and early career decisions have long-term consequences. Developers who start in lower-paying environments or less scalable systems often find it harder to transition into higher-paying tracks later. This creates an early divergence. Two engineers may start at similar levels, but their trajectories separate quickly, depending on where they enter the system. Now, long-term outlook. Over time, the gap between engineers increases. Some move into roles that influence systems, infrastructure, or business decisions. Others remain in execution-focused roles, where the ceiling is more limited. This is not about working harder. It is about where your work sits in the system, and that difference compounds. Now, positioning strategy. Engineers who continue increasing their income tend to move toward areas where impact scales. They work on systems that affect multiple teams, critical infrastructure, or core business outcomes. They shift from solving isolated problems to influencing how systems are built and how decisions are made. This transition is not always visible, but it changes how value is measured. And that is what drives higher compensation. And this is where the long-term difference becomes visible. Small differences in positioning lead to different opportunities. Those opportunities lead to different responsibilities. And those responsibilities lead to different compensation levels. Over time, this creates a widening gap between engineers who started in similar positions. Now, risk and resilience. One of the main risks is staying in a role that feels productive and stable, but offers limited long-term growth. Without active repositioning, it is easy to remain in the same salary range for years. There are often no clear signals that progression has slowed, which makes this pattern difficult to detect until much later. Now, final verdict. Salary growth in tech is no longer a straight line. It is a system of divergence, where small differences in positioning, early decisions, and alignment with demand create increasingly different outcomes over time. And understanding that system is what allows some engineers to keep moving forward while others remain in place.